Rural folk, what is the creepiest thing you've seen or experienced? Grew up in a very rural area of Kentucky on a property that was about 75 combined acres of woods and empty fields out a dead-end, one-lane road. One night when I was a kid, I was sent to take the trash out to the dumpster after dark. The dumpster was already at the bottom of the driveway. About the time I reached the dumpster, I heard the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard. Like a woman was being brutally murdered right in my ear. I flew back to the house and had a full-on come apart, crying and telling my dad to get a gun. Fox screams will make your blood run cold. One night I grabbed my son's toy night vision goggles to see if they even worked. If they did, maybe we could see what was making all the weird howling noises in the woods for the last 2 nights. So, I looked across the yard into the woods and there were so many eyes. So many eyes. They were everywhere. In one case, there was a grouping of 3 eyes. I had myself convinced it was just an opossum with its baby, and I couldn't see the other eye, but then they all blinked at the same time. I have never ever used night vision to look in the woods again. Whatever deformity was there can have its space. When I had just gotten my first car, I was driving home one night around 10 p.m. I came around a corner on a very dark back road and my headlights shined onto a large stake that someone set up on the curve with a deer's head shoved on top. I was nervous the rest of the way home after that. That reminded me of a story. A couple boys who rode the same school bus as I told us about how someone left a dead fox on their fence between their yards. They usually had crazy, unbelievable stories, as some kids do, but they seemed genuinely upset this time. When they got dropped off at their houses that afternoon, I saw the fox with a piece or rebar or something going through its neck, then wedged between the 2 top rungs of the fence. It was traumatizing. I was pretty young. I felt like it was there a couple days before someone got it down. I showed up at a friend's house once, as I did almost every day after school, like 13 years old. I rode my bike everywhere. I usually left it by the side of her pool in her backyard, but as I'm pulling up, she starts waving at me from her front porch. Her parents had gotten upset with us for leaving our bikes up there before, but neither of their cars is in the driveway. So, I cruise up and we head inside. She immediately locks the door and calls 911. She had been up in her room looking for me to arrive, as she usually did apparently, and spotted a man lurking behind their pool, very near where I usually dropped my bike. I was almost kidnapped, or like anything, I don't know. When the cops arrived, they didn't find him. I saw a cougar in person once and it was terrifying. Probably less than 10 feet away. If you've never seen a cougar before, you're imagining it too small. They're just shy of 8 feet long on average and their whole body is muscle. Not muscle like a bull, mind you, but like a tightly coiled wire. Biggest, meanest looking animal I'd ever seen in the wild, and it was completely silent as it went past us. We just stood still for a good couple minutes after it got out of sight. My family lives in an old farmhouse, surrounded by a lake, field and forest. No neighbors nearby. No reason for outsiders being near, it's a dead-end road. This happened to my aunt when she was dog sitting. She wakes up in the middle of the night to some noises. Our dog was less than helpful guard dog and she didn't alert her at all. Aunt sees several people outside with flashlights, walking around the yard. She panics and immediately puts on all the lights and the people escape. She called the cops, but it would have taken them an hour to get there. Nothing was taken, but sure scared the hell out of my aunt. A friend of mine lived in a semi-rural area growing up. One night the cops knocked on her door and warned her that they were looking for a possibly violent fugitive. Told her they'd check her property and that she should lock up and be wary. It wasn't until sometime later that she found out the full story. The fugitive had been caught sexually assaulting a horse in a local stable. In the ensuing panic, The horse's leg was broken, and the man got away. He was found 2 days later hiding in a storm water drain. I lived in rural Colorado. My mother was teacher at a school 20 minutes away from home. Sometimes, I'd help her in the classroom after hours. One night, we were heading home after dark. There aren't many lights in general, so it was very easy to see a green orb shoot up into the sky a few miles ahead of us. I would have written it off as a firework had it not zigzagged and shot off in another direction. It was very fast, but the movement really didn't look right. I looked over at my mom after it happened, and she looked surprised and asked me if I saw that. We never really talked about it again. I live on the central coast of California, which is like halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it is really rural in some parts. The California grizzly has been extinct since the 1920s, but I swear I saw one when I was 7. I was out at night trying to catch frogs and playing with my cousins when I heard something and pointed my torch towards it, and sure enough it was the biggest bear I had ever seen with hump and all. I had seen a black bear before, but this beast was something else. They saw it too and we ran out of there and got my grandpa with his 12 gauge, but it was gone when we got back. Turns out, our neighbor who is still pretty far away claims he saw the same bear about 3 days later. I am sure it was a grizzly from just the massive size alone and the hump, and I was scared about them for a year because my mom told me a week before about how my other grandpa was mauled in Alaska and barely survived an attack by one. I used to live in the desert for a year, and on nights when the moon isn't out or there are clouds blocking out the stars and moon, it's almost pitch black. You can't see more than 10 yards ahead of you. One night, I was driving down the highway going home and then suddenly, in my headlights, I see a guy running on the side of the highway full on sprinting. I'm going 70 miles per hour, so it's only for a second or two, but I'm like, what the hell was he running from? I hope he's okay because I'm not pulling over. But then, maybe a minute later, I see another guy in my headlights, only he's walking on the side of the highway, and I swear to God it looked like the same guy, 2 separate guys in the dark walking or running on the side of the highway. What possible reason could explain that? I didn't see any cars on the side of the road that might have broken down. I was so weirded out, I just had an uncomfortable feeling the entire ride home.